basically give you the extra to
Right.
fix down there.
The one with the men's warehouse, you can have them, it's not hard out for us too.
Yeah, see, I don't go to that.
I was like, geez, I still bought it, I had a wedding to do.
I go to, Common. And Playground.
See, when I order, it's hard for me to buy seats anyway.
He's not.
Because of how small I am. They don't have those on racks.
I did not have an
My
opportunity, no, because
My size, they don't keep on the racks because how many people my size are on
it's
that?
not.
Yeah, they can't turn that inventory.
no emergency warning, so,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that'd be
like
like you getting in the worst
6 weeks.
sports drink possible that nobody wants and watching it collect dust.
Well, I didn't think of it. Good idea.
So I ended up ordering it. I found on the website, they got all sizes, all
Oh,
colors, all everything.
But it's
And because
three,
we
it's
shipping,
3
it takes
meetings.
$150.
It's not a big deal.
Person, so,
We can get
shipping?
that.
We shipping, yeah. It's Men's USA.
I'll text the girl right now.
yeah, I'll go up there. Buy two, get one free or something.
Oh,
Yeah.
Men's USA.
I'm just having more fun with that.
I wish I just had time.
I've had the paper for years in my basement. I brought it in case I needed it.
Fun.
You got
Okay, we're gonna get started in a minute.
awesome.
Everybody check their cell phones, you know what to do with them. Okay. Today is October 25th, it's Monday, 2021, and we have a regular legislative meeting tonight. But before we go into that meeting, we will have committee meetings. We have 5 committee meetings tonight. And the first committee up is City Properties, Parks and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call to order City Properties, Parks and Recreation. It's Monday, October 25th, 2021, 6 p.m. We are in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, as well as everybody noted. We have no new requests for legislation. We do have one request for appointment, Ms. Jessica Starcher to the Parks and Recreation Commission for 4-year term beginning 1/1/2022, ending 12/31/2026. Has everybody had the questionnaire in their packets?
Yes.
Okay, this would be a reappointment of the 5 commissioners. The charter does say that 2 of them have to be from the schools, one of them being a member of the Board of Education, and Mrs. Starcher is one of the principals. I've sat in some meetings there. I've gotten to know her, actually went to school with her, so I knew her beforehand. Does anybody have any comments on this request for appointment? Well, hearing none, do I have a motion to add this appointment to the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that, sir.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is moving on there. And for miscellaneous discussion, I will open it up to the committee.
I have nothing.
Counselor?
We found the person to take position over Mr. Edgar that left.
Yes,
Mr.
that's
Mayor?
the process right now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Javers, I didn't understand what you
I-
asked.
He asked if we replaced Mrs. Edgar's, Ms.
Position.
Oh.
Okay.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Well,
Anything from the body? And from, Mayor?
Just to let everyone know, I'm waiting for one more application for Parks Commission. resident is very interested. They are filling out the application. I had hoped to get it this past weekend and get it to you, but it hasn't come in yet. But they've accepted, they have the application, so I'm waiting to have it returned back. So.
Thank you, and for the council, that will be an unexpired term, so even if it comes to us, we can see it in any month there. So as soon as he gets that back and brings it to us, we'll have it on our sheets here.
Okay.
Do I have anything from the gallery? Okay, I do have one thing. Mr. Mayor, it was brought to my attention and wanted to be mentioned about the nets on the parks there. In the Charter 603B, the powers and duties of the Parks and Recreation Commission are the managers of that. Was this decision from your office based on a safety concern, which would actually put the powers and duties in your hand, or how does that work there?
Yeah, the Parks Commission is in charge of the management of the parks. You know, they don't maintain the parks, but they manage the parks and programs. I made the decision after talking to the safety director and the chief. It's a safety concern. We did have a follow-up meeting, which included the law director, the chief, the president of the Parks Commission, and the Parks Director. And we've been working on a plan, a long-term plan for all of our parks. Under the charter, you see that the service director is in charge of all public lands, and then the mayor is the chief conservator of the peace and does, when there's a safety issue, make decisions.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anything else from anyone? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I will second that, sir.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:05.
Okay, next up is Public Welfare and Safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may ask, I'm going to need my cell phone because I left my notes at work for something
Okay.
that Mr. Greer and I discussed regarding an ordinance that's going to be read tonight, so I may have to look at it. I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, October 25th, 2021, here in council chambers. It is 6:08 p.m. All members of the committee are present. We have several new requests for legislation, and we have one reading, the first reading of an ordinance, and we also have an appointment this evening to look at. So the first request for legislation is a request for legislation from Chief Vincent Morber, requesting legislation to authorize the purchase of 2 police cruisers from Ganley Ford. The funds for the vehicles have been approved, allocated, and are available in the 2021 budget. The total amount is $78,700, emergency wording requested. So, do we have any idea what type of vehicles these are?
I believe they're Ford Explorers.
I they're going to most likely be the same as what they have right now, the SUV style.
Okay. And this is for 2? Now, do these come outfitted, or is that an additional cost?
I believe the 78.7 would have it outfitted. It may not have the decals on it, but it should come outfitted with the light bars and I would think, the light bars and.
Jeremy's shaking his head,
You say no.
No, it does not. Okay. So,
That's just for, I think that's just for the vehicle and a technology package in the vehicle. so they don't have to have separate computers set up inside the car. the cruiser.
So that's for the technology package and the vehicle?
Yeah, and if it's like their past purchases, those SUVs more than likely will be hybrids as well. Because I know the last purchases were hybrids, and I'm pretty sure the police department is satisfied with them, and it's helped reduce their fuel costs this year because of being able to run the hybrids instead.
Sure.
Yes.
Is this the purchase order from Fred Martin there? Because going this would be 2022
No.
Dodge Durango?
No, that's the one I was gonna ask him for.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Do you have any estimates from any other dealerships, the same vehicle?
The police will go and get with Scott Ganley and use state bid pricing. That's all I know. And that's one of the requirements that we get it at state bid pricing.
So we don't have to go to different dealerships to get different prices? The reason I'm asking,
The purchasing process is as long as it's state bid pricing, because if it's state bid pricing, it's already been bidded out.
Yeah.
It's already been bidded statewide, nationwide, whatever it is. It's already been bidded out, so you do not have to go through a bidding process once you get it.
the reason I'm asking, Norton, they use the Durangos, and they're almost $3,000 to $4,000 cheaper than the Ford that we have currently.
So a couple of questions I would just have for that then, are they hybrids?
I'm not sure.
And then does it have the technology package where the computers plug in? Because those could be additional costs
Okay.
for the Durango. And say for instance that Durango's gas powered. You're gonna have higher fuel costs. So in the long run, yeah, we might have to pay a little bit more for a hybrid, but in the long run, we could save money because of fuel costs, especially with fuel prices continuing to rise.
And the service also for hybrids, are they a little bit more expensive?
I'm not sure, I can't speak on that, or I don't know how much our mechanics can do.
The reason I gave estimates to everybody, just, if we can save a couple thousand on the vehicles, and we bought a couple last year and a couple this year, that adds up. I know the hybrid's a little bit more expensive for maintenance too.
Well, this says no service contract on this paper.
Well, our mechanics service our vehicles, correct?
Yes. If you can, look into that, Mrs. DeBelli.
Okay, I'll follow up with the chief and see. I didn't get this, so I don't, would you like me to follow up with Fred Martin to see if this included
Yes, please.
the hybrid and, yes,
If the chief has followed the rules.
right, I agree.
Then
But,
why are we second guessing him?
well, I said I was going to contact the chief first.
Okay, because we didn't go through this when the fire department brought their list in for their vehicles. Why are we targeting the chief?
I'm not targeting anyone.
There's no targeting, ma'am. We're just opening
Sure.
our eyes maybe to see if
Yes,
we get
sir.
better prices.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to hear, just because, have we ever used hybrids before for our police force?
Yes, that's what we
That's what
have
we
now.
have now.
And do we already know the savings versus the gas ones? If we've been using hybrids, shouldn't we know the savings between the hybrids and the regular ones?
They only have 2 or 3 hybrids as of now, because they just got them last year. Last year was the first year they got the hybrids. And I can tell, just from a budget standpoint, where we sit budget-wise, their fuel costs are down this year. Even with the rising gas prices. They're, I want to say at 50 or 60%, I think, last time I checked, of their budget used for fuel. So they are saving money in fuel costs.
That's why they make it.
Thank you. Well, I didn't know with being used as a police vehicle and not just a regular that one of us could own. Obviously, a police cruiser is going to get a lot more usage than anybody in this room driving a hybrid. So that was the only reason I was curious of the difference there.
Yes, Ms. Angel?
Yes, that's the whole purpose of having a hybrid, because it saves on gas. And as much miles and traveling they do, it's just more or less common sense that if you buy a hybrid, you're going to save on gas, and the gas prices have gone up. So that's, why last year they had couple hybrids, and that's why quite a few other cities, when they're ordering their vehicles, they get the hybrid. Because it does save on gas.
Yes.
If you don't mind, if you can't get the service calls on those hybrids, this example, a hybrid battery is almost, some of them are, get up to $1,500 to $2,000 compared to $150 on a regular vehicle.
But
Again,
that saves in gas. That
yeah, but
difference
you're
will save
spending
in
more
gas.
on service. Again, I'm not questioning this or questioning you, just asking questions. It's called conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so service calls. Well, we probably don't have a lot of service calls so far on them if they're only a year old, but I will check.
I would hope not.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Hey, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to point out, I appreciate Mr. Jaber's attempt. I think we're getting sidetracked with the type of car rather than the idea of just shopping around. We don't know if it was shopped around. We know he followed the rules, but if you can shop around, and maybe Fred Martin could give that same exact car for cheaper. Maybe it costs more, we don't know. I do know that Gamely Ford, when I took the tour and I was talking with a service director, or not the service director, I apologize, one of the mechanics, he did say that if they can't fix it, they use Gamely Ford as their dealer to go to fix police cruisers. It also makes sense to, and I hate this term since we've always used something, that stick with it, but in the long run of having the same vehicles, you can replace parts. There's cop cars that were sitting down in the lot, the Crown Vics, and as they get older and rotate out, you save money on pulling parts off of old cars rather than having to buy new parts. So that does make sense. But I think the point that Mr. Jaber was making is not necessarily maybe we switching up the type of car, but just getting different quotes possibly from other places. I understand it's a state bid, and I don't know all of the details for that, but maybe one person may be cheaper. We just don't know.
I'm not certain how the state bid pricing
Yeah,
works
neither. I'm
either.
not quite
Yes,
sure.
Yeah,
Mr.
they
Tracy,
do.
maybe he can weigh in on.
They do.
Well, the
Yes.
state bid is, I wasn't gonna comment on that, but yeah, the state bid is what it is. It's just a consortium that puts together the bid for the state, and then it gets bid for the state's vehicle. So the problem with that is that it's done in some dealership in Columbus that wins the bid. Then you have to hope that a dealership in this area will honor the bid. Well, in this case, Ford will honor the bid. So for them, it's worth it to take the government discount and sell the vehicle to the city. Now, to Councilman Greer's point, we do have a fleet of Ford vehicles. That's the reason that if it's beyond the mechanic's ability, they'll take it to Gamely Ford because it's a Ford vehicle, so it just makes sense. Something else to keep in mind, when you're buying a Dodge, Chevy, Ford, whatever it may be, the specifications for Norton's vehicle might not be the same specifications for Barberton's vehicle. And the same thing for Copley or Coventry or anywhere else. There may be reasons why they specify a certain type of suspension or a certain type of convenience package or a certain type of technology package. So not to say that the Durango wouldn't be a proper vehicle, but doesn't meet all of our department's needs. So that is something that I'm sure Chief Morber has considered throughout his search for vehicles.
Right. Thank you for your input. And those are some of the questions that I will follow up with the chief on tomorrow and report back. But I would like to get this out of committee because I know that our police cruisers, I'm sure we're in desperate need of these. So this is something that I will get on immediately tomorrow, and we can have a discussion before we would vote.
Mrs. Devoto?
Yes.
Chief Morber's on vacation this week.
Oh, he is? Okay. Okay. Would Officer White, would Lieutenant White be able to help?
Sure, or most likely would be Lieutenant Dawson.
Lieutenant Dawson, okay. Okay, I'll reach out to one of them.
Chair,
There's another.
Yes,
Mr. Tracy.
yes, sir.
And I just wanted to say for the record that, the city has purchased vehicles from a number of dealerships in the area in the past 2 years. So we've purchased a vehicle from Fred Martin in the Utilities Garage. We've also bought trucks from Gamely Ford in the Utilities Garage. The Street Garage just bought a vehicle, I think it was last year, from Vanderveer. So in 2016, we bought GMCs from Premier GMC. So there's instances where you have the opportunity to go and get free quotes. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can find it through the CUE, sometimes you can find it through state bid. And sometimes just a matter of, at that time, what's the best option?
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
I got one more question. If, let's say a dealer could give a better deal than what the state bid is for the exact same thing, is that within the law that they can use that dealer to purchase that? Or is it they have to go through that bid process?
You can use that as the comparison.
Okay, thank you.
As long as the specifications match, be at that amount or less.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
When you send us reports, can you please send me the VIN number of the last hybrid we bought, purchased for the city? Thank you.
If I can get it. Yes.
I have just one more. It's, when you do talk to them there, and this is just on my own curiosity, and I probably should have asked last year and didn't, but with the hybrids, what kind of warranty do they get for using a hybrid for a police vehicle? I'm sure it's a different warranty than, again, one of us driving, and once again, that's just for my own knowledge there, because I'm sure they're under warranty. I'm just curious to what kind of warranties they have for hybrids for police vehicles. Thank you.
Okay, so I have a list of questions that I will email to Lieutenant Dawson and Lieutenant White tomorrow, and I'm sure that they will get back with me in a timely manner. So do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mr. Greer,
Second.
second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next request for legislation is a request for legislation from Councilman Sean Javer to modify the sex offender restrictions within the city of Barberton. So I received a letter requesting an ordinance pertaining to residency restrictions for sex offenders within the city of Barberton. Current law, Ohio Revised Code 2950.034 states registered sex offenders may not live within 1,000 feet of any school, preschool, or commercial child daycare center. I would like to add a section to Barberton City Charter, Chapter 656, that states registered sex offenders may not live within 1,000 feet of any school, preschool, commercial child care center, churches, city and private-owned parks, and towpaths. Barberton currently has over 150 sex offenders within our city, sexually abusive behavior, kidnapping, and abduction. This piece of legislation is important because many children spend their time at school, daycare, and/or in parks. This ordinance will help keep the children and residents in our community safe. I am requesting 3 readings, and emergency wording is not requested. So we had, I believe this was passed out as well, and I don't know if this is, could you tell us what you?
Yes, I passed out some information. I made a chart from ohio.gov, and the addresses from the schools for 0.25 miles, and also from the schools half a mile. And that shows you the total sexual offenders in the area. Now, parks is not in the law right now. It's not where forbidden. So we'd like to see if we can add parks on there, also churches. And if you look at it, right now we have 1,000 feet. That's from the state. I need to talk to Mrs. Miller, see if we can do 2,000 feet. But I think I'd like to add on the parks and churches for a reason. Example, I'll give you, 2 weeks ago, I had a 14-year-old young man come in, and he went to the dog park, and he saw a sexual offender that sexually assaulted him when he was 7 years old at the dog park. I don't believe that this should happen. The park should not be a public place for a sexual offender. In a situation like that, he's not breaking the law, but that 14-year-old kid should not be able to see that sexual offender at the park that sexually assaulted him 7 years ago. And personally, I don't think sexual offenders should be at a park.
Okay, I have not reached out to Mrs. Miller about the legalities of this. Mrs. Doherty, can you weigh in at all on?
Yeah, the statutory requirements are set by the state of Ohio through the ORC. under certain circumstances, your city can be more restrictive than the ORC, but not less restrictive. This is a Lisa Miller question by far.
Okay,
I am not qualified to answer.
okay.
I do know about the sex offender offenses, I do know somewhat about the laws, I'm familiar with Summit County has a unit that's dedicated to sex offenders, dedicated to, but the manpower is low, like in all departments. I understand the sentiment, I understand the passion. I am not qualified to answer whether or not this can be done to unilaterally change it from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet. I don't know the answer to that, to add clubs when it's not already in there. Again, under certain circumstances, your city can be more restrictive, not less. But whether or not this is one of those statutes, I don't know. That would require Lisa's input.
Okay. So I will send her an email later this evening as well. Yes, Mrs. Angela?
Mr. Javer, I read here, I would like to add a section to Barberton City Charter, Chapter 656. Where is that in the charter? I don't even see that in the charter.
I think you meant the
You meant the codified ordinances?
development codes.
Development codes. I apologize.
Oh, I brought the wrong book.
So there's not, it's asked for 3 readings. There's no emergency wording requested. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Javer, is the affected by the proposal, the numbers at the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I did find out that one thing we cannot do is, and it wouldn't survive a lawsuit, is basically legislate people to not be able to live in your city, period.
Right.
So as long as it falls within that,
Right.
and not, I've just been told it would not survive a lawsuit if it was zero, as much as, people would like to do that.
I was trying to copy off the skill game ordinances where the churches, parks, towpath, and there's still a small area where they can live. That's over State Street. But for now, I mean, like I said, that situation with the young man who was 14 years old, that was molested 7 years ago, to see that gentleman at the park really gave me an eye-opening, see if we can change that, and that should not happen. I see over 40 to 50 kids a day, and it's a sad situation, you see a kid cry because of that. Wait for his mom and dad to come pick him up from the station because they were scared to walk outside after seeing him.
Understood. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a preschool right there.
That would take care of that.
He was at the parks.
Well, I don't think,
No,
Yeah, but the preschool is,
Is there at that location?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
administration building now.
Preschool's still there.
Is it?
I,
The preschool's still there? Really?
Yeah.
I thought Head Start moved to,
yeah, they
No, it's
added,
not Stark, it's the.
No, Head
school.
Start.
They made that a preschool. Barberton has a preschool at Decker Park, at the administration.
Still any park, I don't think it should be allowed.
yes.
albeit that's a sad outcome. Is this legislation banning them from visiting a park or living near a park?
No, I was just going to ask.
Because the
that
scenario was he was visiting a park.
It says not lived.
same- Right.
While I'm completely for it, I was just wanting to clarify. That's all.
So I think how it's proposed is that, that it, how, I think how, I have to read exactly how it was written again. Sorry.
Live. It's live.
Live.
Yes.
Yeah.
It says live.
Maybe we can add that,
I don't know how you would
I don't.
force
how-
that.
that was gonna be my question, Mrs.
Not live
DeBevick.
would be good for now.
How would we
It's a-
ever
it's a
enforce
start.
stopping somebody from going to a park?
Right.
Just live is,
That's good. We can choose for not living near a park.
So, Mr. Griffin, you're on Safety Committee. How do you feel about this piece of legislation?
I feel about it is the school, I can see the school living within that certain of the school. But as far as visiting a park would be like visiting Calvé, and the kid would come in there and see him. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? I'm not upholding at all for what he did or nothing like that, but there's a lot of rights that goes in here too, civil and, stuff like that. Discrimination. So.
Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify that I am in support of adding churches, parks. If it is allowed and it is cleared through Lisa Miller as not being a civil rights thing or fair housing issue or any other conflict, I am in favor of adding parks, schools, metro parks, and daycares to the list of areas within 1,000 feet.
Is that about living?
Yes, it's living. So the
Correct.
request is
Okay.
strictly about living.
Okay, just living.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
Yes. Okay.
What
Yes.
does the
I
state
can
say?
get a copy of this, I'm curious. This is what, are you proposing, Sharon, 2,000 feet within?
1,000.
It's 1,000.
Okay, all right, so then, and what is the rent, did you suggest a remedy for if someone should move within 1,000 feet, if they're caught within 1,000 feet and within near a park?
It'd probably be the same as what the rolling
I
right
I
now.
believe that
Your request is for 2,000 feet.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
the letter is
It's
1,000.
1,000 feet. The updated one, last email was 1,000 feet.
he changed it because he found out.
Saying there was legal complications with changing.
On Wednesday, October 20th at 4:51. I don't know if you guys have the letter or not.
Is it this one?
Yes.
Yeah, I did see.
So the Barberton City Charter should be Barberton Development Code. So I think it states in there the penalties already. So I would assume that the penalties would be the same. Yes.
I would like to know how they enforce this. Because if somebody bought a house, I don't think they do a background check on you. So how do they know where all these sex offenders live?
They have to
They have to
register.
register.
They have to register?
Yes, by
Okay.
Ohio Revised Code.
But what do they do if they've already purchased their home and it's less than 1,000 feet?
It's like any other ordinance, it would take effect after it's been signed.
I do have a question.
Yes.
What is a private-owned park?
I can answer that.
Okay.
The park, right across the street from Aaron's Studio and Ferris Corner on Tusk by a church, it's a park right there in the corner. That's a privately owned park.
Okay, by the church?
Yes, ma'am. It's owned by a church. Right there on the corner of Tusk and 7th Street.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Chair,
sir.
if I may, Councilor Angelov, there's also one that was just built on, was that Brown and Worcester? It's white fenced in across from the old white front there. That's another private, like, child playground thing.
I really think I have to do some research on this because of the amusement devices that
Right.
churches,
Right.
that's,
right down there.
I think, I don't think you could put churches in that. We couldn't do it for the other, because it's a place of safe haven, it's a sanctuary, it's, there's a lot of definitions when you're looking at churches. That's where a lot of people go, so I don't know if you can do that.
No, they're allowed to visit, but you just can't live there. That's what they're, like Mr. Heidick said, you can visit, and Mr. Griffin said, the example, you can visit the park, but you just cannot live there, 1,000 feet from the park or a church.
So the first thing you gave us is different than the second thing.
Right, the second
Because
one's
you had
updated.
200 sex offenders.
Yeah, the second one is
Okay, so this
updated.
one's not,
You can
I
you
shouldn't
can
be
pitch
using
that.
this one, right?
Yeah, throw that away.
so it's changed.
Yes, ma'am, October 20th is the last one updated.
Okay.
Did you pass the request out to everybody or just to me?
They were added to the back
Yeah,
of the packet because I already had the packet.
I just didn't know which
stapled
one you
together.
were talking about because there was two different ones.
Okay.
Chairwoman,
Yes, sir.
I'd be very cautious about putting church in there because you can see churches, sprouting up in non-typical church buildings. So we've seen them in all types of buildings. There's one that just started at the theater downtown, so someone could buy a house, by all the rules, and then a church pops up, now there's conflict. When did they buy the house, when did the church pop up?
And that's what technology is for, that's what the computer and auditor's office would let us know the dates and times.
Right, but if someone buys a house and they follow the rules, and then a church pops up after they purchased the house.
Right.
Now they're in violation of the rule, because churches come and go.
This is something that I think we really need to discuss with Mrs. Miller.
I do too.
I think we have to make sure that we're within the confines of the law. I mean, just like we did on the last one, I'm okay with calling for it because it's 3 readings and it's not emergency wording and it's just as easily pulled as it is, you know, if Mrs. Miller tells us what we can or cannot add and if when she advises us. I don't know how my committee feels about that. Yes, go ahead.
Well, you don't want to pull something, we don't have legislation, so you don't want to pull something out that we don't have. There isn't a draft legislation or anything, is there, or did I?
No, we don't have a draft.
So, you know.
Well, I didn't have a draft for the police car either,
Or the nuisance.
or the nuisance. I don't have a draft for anything.
Oh, okay.
Drafts are not done until you guys call for them in committee of the whole, or get ready to call for them. Then they go, like if you, tonight, when you said, can I call for this legislation?
Right.
Then they will create the draft for it. It'll be in your packets for committee of the whole.
Yes.
And then after you guys call for it, I'll number
Right.
it.
Correct. So we don't have a draft anyway, so before that would be drafted, I would like to speak with Lisa anyway, so. Safety Committee, how do you feel about calling for it, me speaking with Lisa, or I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller tomorrow, and having her look into it? Or do you want to wait until the next safety meeting in 2 weeks? Yes, sir.
Chair, I'm fine with calling for this as Councilman Javer presented in the letter here.
Okay.
Yeah, I have too, Mr. DeBevick. We can call for it, and at least, like you said, it's 3 readings, so we can.
Right. We have time to
We can always
acquire
amend
the
it. Right.
information. Okay, so do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
And this passes. The second, the third request is a request for legislation to modify the penalties for catalytic converter theft convictions within the city of Barberton. There's also a letter from October 20th. Does everyone have a copy of that request? So the proposal is, please request an ordinance enforcing strict penalties for anyone found guilty of stealing catalytic converters within the city of Barberton. Those found guilty of stealing catalytic converters are subject to fines up to $5,000 and 6-month driver's license suspension. And then it gives some statistics about catalytic converter thefts being on the rise, and that there is a House bill proposed as well. This is also 3 readings without emergency wording. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I did get police reports today around 5 o'clock. I picked them up. It's, the last 2 years, we've had over 43 reports, over 120 plus catalytic converters stolen in Barberton. I think a lot of people say they don't have driver's license or stealing these catalytic converters or the money, but might deter them from thinking twice of doing it with that harsh of a penalty. And I hope you guys can pull this out of the committee. I do have a copy of the reports if anybody wants to see it. If anybody wants to look at them, I can pass them around.
You said there were 123 stolen?
Over 120, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And 43 reports from what I got right here.
And how many have been in the last year? I mean, you said 2 years, but is it on the rise more this year?
I believe it is. I had 2 personally in my ward. They did one in my ward and one in Mrs. Colburn's ward. They did make a police report. One was on 6th Street over the weekend, and one was on 17th Street over the weekend. Daly's has been hit, the Parks Department's been hit, Big Mike's Auto Body's been hit, Magic City Motors, and a couple of churches have been hit also in this area alone.
Impound.
The impound lot, I believe. Thank you.
Does anyone have any, yes?
I think that possibly we should approach this about the people that are buying them,
Yeah.
They're working on
because
that
they
right
have
now.
money.
Yes, they're working on that right
And
now.
if they're buying them after people steal them, I think that maybe that's the way to go so that they have nowhere to sell them. Because that's not something that you steal and then you say, hey, do you need a catalytic converter? You know, it's
Well, I think that's
not.
that's what the House bill has proposed, is that the fine would be on them.
Correct.
So I think that this is a different aspect of it.
A local
But
ordinance.
I think that's the aspect that you would want to follow because of the fact that, I don't know what,
Well, why should the person that was stole it not be punished?
oh, well, they should,
Right.
but I'm saying you're not, even if they're punished with a fine, where are you going to get the fine?
Yeah.
And
It's no
as
different-
Mr. Javer just said, most of them don't have driver's licenses. So
But
they've
all
already
I'm
been
going to say is,
suspended.
we've passed fines for cutting lawns that are overgrown to the tune of like $300 or $400. Those same people don't have money either. We had that same argument, so.
But they have a property that you can ding. You're gonna get your money. If it's just an individual that doesn't have anything, how are you ever gonna get your money? With the lawns, somebody owns that property. So someday down the road, we would get some money back. With proposing a fine, I don't think we are on individuals. I'm not saying I'm against it or anything like that, but I think that we should probably see how it runs its course in the state with the House bill before we make.
Yeah, I'm actually 100% for this. I don't think there's anything to be lost by putting this in place. It's a criminal. They're stealing. If we collect it, we collect it. If we don't, we don't. It could potentially deter it. Chances that it will are probably slim to none. I don't see any issue with this, but yes.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have the proposed House bill pulled up in front of me here. One, there would be three additions. The first, if the property stolen is a catalytic converter as defined in section 473704 of revised code, violation, this section is theft of a catalytic converter, a felony of the 5th degree. The second part is if the offender has previously been convicted of or pled guilty to a violation of, and it names and numbers of a revised code, theft of a stolen catalytic converter is now a felony of the 4th degree, so it escalates. And the final piece is if the property stolen is a catalytic converter as defined as of the revised code and the offender is a business entity, a violation of this section is enterprise theft of a catalytic converter and notwithstanding sections, other ones, punishable by a fine of not less than $10,000 and not more than $50,000 per violation.
Now, is that for a business, the
That-
last part?
Yes.
Yes.
That's the business, okay. The personal, nothing for personal?
The personal is, the first time would be a F5 and a repeat offense would be an F4.
No fine.
Well,
I mean,
Well,
it would be a fine.
you would have to refer to the other
Felony.
codes for the fine schedule there.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, Mrs. Angel.
Currently, if I stole one and got caught, what is the penalty? In our court right now, or our ordinance, or our legislation, our ticket, or what do we have currently? Because it doesn't have it on here. Yes, Mr.
I
Javer?
did get an email today from Mrs. Miller. There's no specific law in the state of Ohio for the theft of catalytic converter. However, state law provides that the value of the catalytic converter is less than $1,000 to be a misdemeanor of the 1st degree, which would be up to 6 months in jail, up to a $1,000 fine. If the catalytic converter is between $1,000 and $7,500, it is a felony of the 5th degree. Sentencing has been many variables. The maximum fine is $2,500.
25.
So it would double the fine from $2,500 to $5,000.
Yes.
I guess my question to that then would be, if there is, to answer that, there is no specific law, but it seems like a dollar amount in theft. Would the city be able to suspend a state-issued license with municipality law superseding state. Is that even possible? You get what I'm understanding? Are we able to suspend a state-issued license using a city law? If there's nothing on the books at the state level
Right.
to begin with?
So what I'm going to say is I don't feel like this is addressing someone that would have a state, oh, I see what you're asking. Okay.
A driver's
someone with
license is
driver's
issued by the
license,
state.
yeah.
In order to suspend it, we have to have something on the state
Right.
level to suspend it, I would assume. I mean, I don't know, that's why I'm
I don't
asking.
know. I don't know about that.
Would a local law, if we enacted it, would we be able to legally suspend a state-issued license with something that's not even on the Ohio books?
Right.
I got a question.
Yes.
Maybe it would be beneficial if we sent a resolution down to the state of Ohio, to Bob Young, that we're backing, we are backing the state House Bill 408. Maybe the encouragement, maybe other communities too. We do resolutions all the time, letting them know how we feel about that. I don't know how fast this would be passed, and I'd have to go back on House Bill and see what Mr. Heidig already said that. But I don't know if this House Bill 408 passes, then that kind of encumbers all of Ohio. Is that correct? So
Yes.
that would be, we would be under the House Bill 408, the judges.
Jeremy?
Yes.
It was it was introduced 9/2 and referred to committee in the House on 9/21. That's where the status update is on it. So it hasn't even been read yet or had its hearings down there yet.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thanks, Chair. I'll come out and say that I support this, given, as a local law, given, and as far as the suspension of the license, if we're legally allowed to do that, then I support that. But again, this is something that we would, based on legal advice, do we keep that in there or not? The fine, I'm pretty sure we can probably do, but as far as that state license, that question I had, I don't know. But I do support this.
Okay. Mayor, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, to Justin's comments, I would check with the law director on what supersedes what. I think that's all spelled out in the ORC. I would check with the law director. And then in terms of the comparison of charging for unmowed yards, that's more civil, where this is obviously criminal, which is held by the ORC. So there's a clear difference there. But I also agree with Councilwoman Angela on a resolution to the state supporting that as well.
Mr. Griffin, what do you think?
Well, the thing I can say is we have to talk to Mrs. Miller.
Right.
And try and get the resolution like Nina and Mrs. Angelos were talking about, and to see what we can do before we actually try and do it, because there's a lot that's already on there. And I don't know if you remember, several years ago, Hovind High School had their bleachers stolen, brand new aluminum bleachers.
Yeah, for the sale.
Yeah, and the thieves were caught in West Virginia. So these people will go to any length to sell this stuff, you know what I'm saying? But we can't put more teeth for our local area and to make it difficult for them to get rid of it. But like I said, they go to any lengths to. And the dealer in West Virginia alerted the authorities and caught these people. In West Virginia, trying to sell stuff stolen from Akron, Archbishop Hovind. So it'd be the same thing, they would definitely try and get rid of it anywhere because of the money.
Right. Okay, well, this is 3 readings have been requested, and I think the only thing that we truly have in question is that if we can legally suspend a 6-month driver's license. So I will check with Mrs. Miller on that tomorrow as well. But are we comfortable with taking this out of committee as well, since it's 3 readings? Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
And I'll second.
second by Mr. Greer. All in favor?
Aye.
And this passes. Okay, we have a pending appointment to the Metro RTA Board, Mr. Charles Rector, for a 3-year term, beginning 1/1/2022 and ending 12/31/2024. Does everyone have a copy of the Boards and Commissions questionnaire? Does anyone have any questions regarding this appointment? Do I have a motion to call for this appointment?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
And I'll second.
second by Mr. Greer. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we do have one piece of legislation this evening that is going to be read for the first reading, and it's ordinance number 115-2021, to amend ordinance number 84-2006. This is with regard to the nuisance law. This was proposed by Mr. Greer. I did reach out to Lieutenant White regarding a request that Mr. Greer made the last time we had safety about sitting down and seeing the system that's used. Lieutenant White called me, ended up calling me, and we had a great conversation, and then Mr. Greer and I spoke, and we kind of maybe ironed out why, I hope it's why everybody else was confused and why it wasn't just me that was confused, but but before we entertain that conversation, Mr. Greer, I did look in the draft and it does not say rolling in it.
Rolling is a relative, like a term that I was using, so it would be the changing of the words is to the I'd have to look at it. It's based off of the earliest nuisance, rather than in a 365-day, rather than, it removes calendar year. So rolling is a term that I use to kind of try to explain the logic of it's always moving.
So I'm curious if maybe that word needs added, because if
Sure.
you read it, it doesn't seem like what we talked about.
Yeah, I don't know if rolling is a legal term to use to
No.
explain that.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and well, first of all, I just want to give everybody an update on the conversation that Lieutenant White and I had. But I forgot my notes at work, so I'm going to use my phone because I had someone at work take a picture of it. Okay, so essentially, there are 3 ways that nuisance law, or the nuisance violations are generated. The first one is that the chief and lieutenant go through call logs whenever they have time. The second one is it's complaint driven. Neighbors call and say, the cops are always at this address. So then they look into the address. The third way is that one of the cops will drop Lieutenant White an email and say, we've been to this house a lot, we don't know, can you look at it? He said that as of this year, building department also decided they were going to collaborate, and they have sent 2 building nuisances this year from the building department, the police department has. They do use the Sundance computer software. It is the same Sundance software that we have access to. Every call and report is in there, exclusive. But, so if the building department uses Sundance and the police department uses Sundance, they don't overlap. So you can't see what's going on in the building department at the same address as what's going on in the police
Can the
department.
police, though, see what's going
No.
on in building?
No.
See, that's the problem.
They're separate.
That's the problem.
So, We also had a conversation about, so since 2012, he said there have maybe been 100 nuisance violations or letters generated in all. So it's not a lot. He said 21 letters have been sent this year, and 3 were step 2 letters. Step 2 letters are indicating that a fine has been generated and that it's going to the finance department, and then the finance department can put a lien on the property. Lieutenant White said he's not certain if we do. He said a lot of times, most of the times, ironically, they call and say, oh, it won't happen again, and it kind of cleans up the problem. Or the landlords are, particularly the landlords, are pretty strict about to their tenants then. So he and I, when we had the conversation, his concern was that the paperwork could potentially be a nightmare. But I think that he was understanding it the way I thought it was being presented. So I'm going to let Mr. Greer give an example, because I don't feel like the example that Mr. Greer gave me is what it says in this ordinance. So now the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So after I talked with Mrs. DeBevick about this and what Lieutenant White was referring to, one of the things that caught my attention was Lieutenant White said, it doesn't matter what date we start this on, if it's here or if it's from January 1st to December 31st, or if it's from April 1st to, that 365 days, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be the same. And that's where he was referring to, it could be a nightmare. But it made me realize that I was explaining it a little wrong. The scenario he gave was it 3 nuisance calls, let's just say, and from January 1st to December 31st. And the way I presented it, it wouldn't have changed it if one more qualifying nuisance call came in after the first of the next year. It would reset. And he said it didn't matter where at in the year that was, it would always be the same as what it is now, so changing the date would only complicate things, which completely makes sense. And that's why I scratched my head like, wait a second, I think that there's a misunderstanding here. So in talking with Mrs. DeBevick about this, we mentioned a scenario or a metaphor on what it was like, that what I was proposing was similar to. And I said it was similar to the points of your driver's license.
And I added that I've never had any points, so I needed him to explain it to me.
So let's say that you get points, you get a ticket, right? And your insurance company looks at your thing. And they look at it for, say, 5 years, 3 years, 5 years. We'll just use 5 years as an example. After that 5 years to the date that you got that ticket, it's off. However, they look still at 5 years, right? So you've accumulated, possibly, if you're lead foot or traffic violations, you still have it never reset after that time. So here is what this is saying is that it is a rolling 365 days. So
the way you explain it to me, you use numbers. So let's say you on October 25th today, you have 10 points on your license, okay? Or no, you get 5 points on your license. And then so then 5 years passes, but in that 5-year period, you got another speeding ticket and you got 3 more points, so now you have 8 points. But 5 years pass and that 5 points now is ready to come off of your license. So during that time, that 5 years comes off, but you just got those 3 points and those 3 points stay on.
for another 5.
For another 5 years. So what he's saying, the analogy with the ordinance that he's proposing is that, so you get your first call on April 1st, your first nuisance call, then there's a nuisance call in December, and then there's a nuisance call, the third one is on April 2nd. So this was Lieutenant White's example. So if it's April 2nd, it didn't matter, it was 365 days, and the third nuisance call is after that date anyway. So why does it matter if it's a 365 day or if it's if it's a year, just January to December? The same analogy can happen, or the same circumstances can happen. So then we got to speaking, and he said, well, no, what I mean is that in April, so he got one in April, well, that fell off on April 2nd, but he still has two, or he or she, I should say, still has two, because the one in December now is the first one. So it doesn't totally restart. So when he's saying a rolling 365 days, am I explaining that
You're absolutely right.
correctly? And I don't,
The scenario, I hate running into this. To me, it's easy, but it's just in my head. So I'm trying to explain it, right? So we'll run a scenario. I get it. So what would happen, Lieutenant White or Vince, Chief gets a call, says, hey, this address is possibly a nuisance. We've been there a couple times. Can you look into it? The way it is now is it just completely resets, like it drops off to zero nuisances January 1st, no matter what. This would say, what they would do is they would look at the last, or the last nuisance call that was made, qualifying call that was a nuisance call. The most recent one. And that would be the start of the 365 days back into time. So within that 365 days from the last one, it doesn't matter what time of year it is, it's 365 days from the last call. If they've met that 3 nuisance criteria calls, then it would qualify as a nuisance. So it doesn't matter what part of the calendar year it is. The calendar year is out of the question at this point. It's always the 365 days from the last qualifying call. And it rolls no matter what.
so for example, if there was so someone called and said on October 25th and said, can you look back at the nuisances? It wouldn't go back just to January, it would go back to last October. So it would go from October 25th, 2021 to October 25th, 2020.
Let me ask,
Yes.
though, are you saying that that's how it is now?
No, that's what
That's how I'm
he's proposing.
proposing.
That's what
I
he's
knew what he
proposing.
was proposing.
You
but-
understood that he
Yes,
was
I understood
proposing
what
that
he
it would
was
drop
proposing.
off?
Yes, but the thing
that's not how
is,
it
the way that you were just explaining it, I thought, oh, well, they already do that. That's what it sounded like, when you say it doesn't
no.
drop off and it doesn't reset and this and that and the other thing. So,
So the way it's written here says, I don't feel like that's how it's written. That's my
if we
opinion.
can-
Go ahead. Oh, I'm not, oh, yes, go ahead. We're still
It just
safety.
says 365 days of the earliest nuisance activity. So should it say 365
Right.
days of the last?
Yes.
You
The
could,
last
yeah, you could
nuisance?
say it that way.
And forget
It-
about the rolling calendar, I
Yeah.
would just say the last instead of the
Whatever,
earliest?
whatever term makes
So
sense
that's
to
the way
everybody.
I was reading it the way you just, so when I was reading it, it wasn't making sense with.
So
this.
it's-
Be the last nuisance call.
So the terminology taken was directly out of the law as written now. So the earliest meaning the latest call. But I can see how it could get flipped, and we could absolutely rewrite it, but to mean what we need it to mean.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Councilor Angeloff's right. If you went by the most recent, then you would never have a violation.
Right,
Because if you went by the most recent, then your next violation is the most recent.
right.
So it does have to be written
Right,
very,
but
it has to
we would
be
always
written very
look back-
carefully so we can
Right,
interpret it.
so that's where I was misled. When I read this, I felt like I didn't understand the conversation that we had in here, so, yes.
what did Lieutenant White say about doing this?
Well, I haven't called him back to talk to him about this, about our conversation,
Well,
because
when I did talk to him because I was there for another matter, because I have.
he was against
Yes,
this.
he was
but-
against-
But we did not have the conversation that,
Because he said you'd have too many start and stop dates. Because every time there was an incident, you have a start date, and he said it would
But
really
the
be
incidences are
problematic.
already done manually anyways. They're already handling each one individually,
they are.
already.
Chris-
There's no magic button to
Lieutenant
give
White
them
did say
a
that.
thing.
Well,
I think he just didn't understand what was
something was
being asked.
said within these meetings that, and we just discussed it a minute ago, when you said building is not included in
Right.
that. Well, when you get a building call, that is a nuisance. So therefore, if we had all of the systems together, like that you have a nuisance from the building, you have a nuisance from the police, you have a nuisance from whatever else, the health department, I don't know.
The water department.
Then it would be very easy to say this property is a problem. In fact, I got a letter this week from a home in my ward, and it has a nuisance letter on it, so they can't get any more calls. I also have another property in my ward that has had more than 3 calls, but they're not police calls. They're nuisance calls on property and what have you. So I think I'm gonna call the police department and say, you know what, I have another nuisance, because this particular property, I mean, there's somebody there every week.
Right.
So it's just that our whole system is not set up to make it possible to get the nuisances because they come from more than one source.
Department, yeah.
Yes, Mrs. Angela.
And I thought we talked about increasing the cost too, because I too have a letter, a nuisance letter from Lieutenant White, $200 they owe. But this has been going on for 6 years. And every time they go to court, okay, we'll give you 30 days, we'll give you 30 days, we'll give you 30 days. He came to court just last Wednesday, and they gave him till November 3rd. Now, if he's not gonna clean it up in 6 years, he's not gonna clean it up within the 2 weeks that the court gave him, so they're gonna give him probably jail time. Well, then, it's a misdemeanor, so you're gonna give him jail time. It's still sitting there, and those neighbors, for 6 years that I've been on council, it was there before I became on council, so it's still there. And they just fined him $200. Well, we'll never see that money. I mean, they'll put it on the property taxes, or they'll put a lien on the property, something of that sort. It still isn't cleaning up the problem. And I met with Mrs. Miller and the police and the fire department and everybody in building department. We had a big come to Jesus meeting. And after that meeting, he's been cited 3 more times. So it's not,
Cut and
something's
dry.
not working, because we have done everything. It's when it gets to the courts, and God love the courts, and the judges give them every chance they can get. But 6 years is a long time to give somebody a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance. And I thought we had talked about raising that from $100 to maybe the first nuisance to $150 and the second one $200 or something of that sort. And I don't see that in here. I would change anything if I knew that these areas, these homes that maybe all of us have several in our ward, that we can do something about it. This is changing something, yes, but it's not resolving the problem. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I support raising the fines, Mrs. Angeloff. However, the police chief does not. He does not want the fines raised. He doesn't, he said it clearly in his email, he didn't. And he don't want the police to be a revenue generator. I am crazy happy that this piece of legislation has made everybody come out and the flaws in our system. However, this piece of legislation is for earlier enforcement of things. If we want to present other legislation and tackle, like everybody has been saying, then we need to tackle the bigger picture too as well. But this is only addressing the city to be able to enact sooner on the issue. That's it. It's not what they're enacting. It's not changing anything else. This is just simply providing the city a quicker route to handle nuisance calls, a different method of, now I'm completely for revamping, getting the building department to merge these systems, but I think that's a larger issue and outside of this. Now, if we want to tackle it, pull this and tackle, I'm completely fine with that, but this is, I'm just excited that this piece of legislation brought the flaws out of the system, so. Anyways, that's all I have to say. I'd really like to see this piece of legislation by itself, no bacon, go through as presented. But I hope other council members can see it that way too as well.
So I just want to piggyback on both of you. Just one second, Mrs. Doherty. And then, so Lieutenant White did also indicate that raising the fines just is not, it's not, they don't want to they don't want us to raise the fines. Because he honestly said that most of the ones that were criminal, ironically, are the ones that they get the third letter and then there are no more calls there. The three that they haven't heard back from, or the 2 or 3 that they haven't heard back from, are from the building department. The ones that they generated from the building department. So, and they also indicated that it's not a revenue maker. It's not to make money. It was to clean up the neighborhoods. And, so Mrs. Doherty, I don't know.
I think that's being slightly misrepresented. I believe the question was posed to the chief in an email from Mr. Greer asking the chief's opinion about raising the fines. And the chief's answer was that the police department is not a revenue maker, nor should it be in that position. And that, I believe his answer was that it's up to the legislators if they want to do that. That's the way I read it. I don't know that that they would make a decision to raise or not raise the fines. And maybe they did, Mrs. DeBevick, maybe Lieutenant White said that to you, but my recollection of the email from the chief was that it's not the police department's position to raise a fine. That is left for the legislators.
Right.
That's my impression.
Well, and Lieutenant White and I, we also spoke about when it does get, the $100 fine does get sent to the finance department. Mr. Flager, do you put liens on properties then? I mean, we're talking about 100 since 2012. We just need to keep in mind how many it is, what we're discussing. It's not a lot.
Yeah, I mean, in the history that I know of, we have not put those fines on liens, because that would take legislative action on council. I would have to bring that to council, what would that be, around July or September? Just like we did for delinquent water bills or the grass cutting, those kind of fines, that would have to be brought.
So if someone doesn't come pay of their own free will, then we don't collect the fine anyway. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. But I mean, we can change that definitely. We can change that going forward. Like I said, the history of it has not. But I can change that going forward.
Mr. Heidick's been patiently waiting, and then Mr. Griffin, you're next.
No, thank you, Chair. What I'm seeing here is, when Councilor Fry said that certain things we can assess to taxes, well, I'm looking at 67401, nuisances enumerated. E and F are the ones that essentially deal with building. The rest of them are criminal. If those two, because I think back to what the mayor said, that maybe we have to redo what constitutes a nuisance, instead of sitting here trying to think how can we merge the two, if we were to strip E and F out of here, along with this would solely be criminal ones and not say somebody's sewer's leaking, that's a nuisance, and if he doesn't fix it in a week, we can hit him again. That would be solid building things. So if we move forward with this, again, it just struck me when the mayor said maybe we redo what nuisances are. There's 19 nuisances listed under here. 2 of them shouldn't be here. They should be in building, because when we're sitting here talking about finding somebody for a nuisance, 17 of them are for, lack of a better word, being a jerk. Yeah, this one's injuring animals, disturbing the peace, fireworks, those nature. So I think that if we were to strike E and F out of nuisances enumerated, wouldn't they be in the building code already to be cleaned up, and the building would be citing for what they're supposed to do anyway, and we wouldn't worry about the building department citing them, plus it's a nuisance. We would actually be focusing on the people that are being jerks. And every time a call goes out, here's assault, aggravated menacing, offense against property, theft violation, weapons, explosive, fireworks, open burning, curfew violations, unruly children. That has nothing to do with the building. That has to do with people being jerks. Those are the real nuisances here. So I would be in favor of going forward with this, but at the same time amend it, and it's not my committee, amend it to strike E and F out of this. Because that to me solves the problem, because like Counselor Fry said, those could be put on your taxes if you're not fixing your stuff and the building department's citing you. Why should that be a nuisance and a building violation?
We can't, excuse me, I don't think we can fine them for not fixing their spouting or not doing a lot of the things that they're not doing. And then, as Mrs. Angela brought up about them coming to court, they just don't come.
Correct, but
They
under
don't come.
the nuisances
So you can't-
enumerated,
You can't
it's,
even blame the courts.
right, but it's any health, safety, or sanitation violation is E. That's not a criminal nuisance, that's a building nuisance. They can already be cited for that, can't
And it used to
they?
be a health nuisance, and we don't have a health department anymore.
Right, but wouldn't those fall under building? And that an inspector could cite them if there's a safety or sanitary violation?
They
Insta-
could, but some of the sanitary, you would have to get into the home. I mean, a lot of these homes could be
So what's-
condemned
right,
if they got
so-
in.
So that's what I'm saying, the department's already has that, the building department already has the authority for some of
And they
these.
have 3 people.
Right.
Mr. Griffin's
But it
next.
shouldn't be a
so-
nuisance.
I'm sorry, Mr. Tracy.
I would just like to see
I've got a
it.
list of whose hands went up
Last
first.
time,
Second.
are you watching your half hour by any chance?
We've passed.
I mean, we do have other,
No, I know. We
gotta have
can,
3
so
people.
they can each have a couple minutes left, and then we'll be finished.
Okay, thanks, Mrs. DeBavick. I do this all the time. Building. I did it 3 times today. I looked at 3 properties today, this morning. And they were already turned into building, Tammy Frost. I have stuff, she sends me emails. The people don't show. And when they do show, you know, they get a little pat, they go back, and it's the same thing. I have one person it's been years when I was at large, a tournament, and it's the same thing, the same people. And there's no teeth in what we do. And we don't have a health department. I have animal complaints. I have three pit bulls tied up to one tree, hollering and screaming all day. We don't have an animal person, you know? So what can we do? We gotta change something. We gotta do something. Either we're gonna put more teeth in it and do something, or do nothing and just walk away. We gotta do something.
Okay, Mr. Tracy, you're up.
I was just gonna mention that, you know, Mr. Height was mentioning that there was some overlap, or it looked like there was some, you know, some building items in the nuisance law, and that's true, there is. But the building inspectors have, through property maintenance and our development code, a lot of that stuff covered. It depends on how they cite the person. So they might cite them through the property maintenance code for something, for a sanitation issue or something, instead of through the nuisance code. So it's usually based on severity, and they have to, you know, they have to determine whether it's a nuisance or not, because they're 2 different things, and one's much more severe than the other, because it's criminal and civil.
So just for clarification, because when I spoke to Lieutenant White, I felt like, so could they have one sanitary problem and then 2 criminal problems, and then it serves as a nuisance? So that by combining them, you have a better chance of getting them, if you will.
No, mine's been a court.
Because maybe they only let fireworks off twice, but then their sewer doesn't work or whatever. You know, then you get your 3 faster, or you have more.
But if I just made one comment to that, and then I'll be done, I promise. Your sewer backing up, you've got to take money and time and materials to fix.
Right.
You lighting off fireworks in front
Right,
yard, you're
okay.
being a you-know-what, and I'm not going to say it because it's,
Right.
pretty explicit. There's the difference.
Right. Okay, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to remind all council that if you see an issue, you're more than welcome to write your own piece of legislation to fix it. Right? We do have a bigger issue here, and there is a bigger issue. I'm just asking that and I'm glad to start the conversation. I'm just asking that this go forward, maybe be amended to be more clear. but just move this forward by itself. And we can start the conversation, but each one of us, including the city administration that has input on this, has the ability to present legislation to go for that thing that they want to change. So, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for this. I mean, start, and we need to do something. And I can tell you one thing, for the last 2 years I've been on council, last 3-4 months, our building department guys have been really doing great. I mean, I've had customers, I've had residents, I've had landlords come in, cuss out Roger, cuss out Kyle, cuss out Mr. Tracy, and that's what we want. We want them to be mad and upset because they're gonna fix stuff, and they're doing their job. So what we need to do is find a way where we can start penalizing them sooner and faster. And this way, we can get on them and stay on them. That's what we need to work on. But this is a great start. I think the building department guys are doing a great job. And I told Roger myself last week, 2 weeks ago, I'm like, it felt great to hear somebody cuss you out because you're doing your job. And he's doing a great job at it. That's it, thank you.
So, we are moving forward with this, and every council person will get, I'm sorry, I can't see over the,
Sorry. Real quick, I just want to say, Mr. Greer is absolutely correct with the term rolling year. It's actually used mostly in the medical field. A lot of times for chiropractic and PT, if you start your first day of service October 2nd, you have until October 1st of the following year. So if something happens October 25th, all you would do when you go to log that in is look back to October 25th of last year and count. It really should not be that difficult. So, but that is, I just wanted to say that's the correct term, I think, probably where he got that from.
yes, Mayor.
Just real quick on the property maintenance side on residential, talking about what is defined as a nuisance or not. In the rental registration, there is a financial penalty if the person is not compliant after they're cited, before it goes to court. On the owner occupied, there is no financial component. So on the rental side, if the owner is not compliant with the citation, they can be fined the first time up to a certain amount, the second time up to a higher amount. And then I believe there's a third tier as well. Owner occupied, there is none. So when we're talking about nuisances, I feel that owner occupied should be treated just the same as the rentals. But we don't have that right now on the financial side before it gets to court. So because before it gets to court, or by the time it gets to court, could be months. And then the court could extend an additional time to fix a citation. So I think there's a number of things that we're discussing here.
I agree.
I don't know if you have to mix the software programs. I think that we communicate with each other, but things do fall through the cracks. But if there's administrative penalties on the owner occupied, I think that would help out as well.
So, as I was saying, this was pulled out of committee. This is the first reading this evening. We have 2 more readings after this. I would be a proponent of changing the wording to make it a little clearer. I don't know if we can get together and do that. And then I would also like to touch back with Lieutenant White and kind of see if he was thinking what I was thinking, just for clarification. So, do we have anything else for miscellaneous discussion? Yes.
Okay, you got a lot of homework to do this week.
I do. You guys want to make sure I don't sleep this week, right? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin,
And I'll second.
second by Mr. Greer. We are adjourned at 7:25. Holy smokes. More.
Oh my God, you started.
This is first reading tonight.
I didn't even know it was that late until Nina said.
And we'll
until someone
probably amend it.
Good? Okay, next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules Marketing Development. I would like to call this meeting to order today, Monday, October 25th. We are meeting in council chambers. All members present and all others as noted. Tonight, we have no requests for legislation, So we are open up to miscellaneous discussion from the body here. Yes, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair. I did pass out some rule suggestions that have been passed out through me in the past few months there. I would like to point out in my printout, I must have hit the wrong button at one point. The fourth line down, under the first section there, where it starts off the council, that strike that entire line, because I don't know how that popped up there. I don't know if anybody else caught that.
I did, I was like, what happened
Thank
to
you.
Mr. Heidick? He never writes like that.
Yeah, I didn't have, when I originally typed that, I didn't have a mouse and was trying to use my finger on my laptop, which is an absolute disaster. I have a mouse now, so I'm good.
Which
It doesn't
line do
make
you
sense.
want struck?
The fourth line.
The fourth line.
If you read it, it doesn't make
It
sense.
doesn't, yeah. You see it there? All right, now that that's out of the way, Chairman, if you want to entertain any conversation on this, or if you want councilors to digest this and come back in 2 weeks with their opinions, I'm happy to answer anything, or I'm happy to let go tonight, and it is your charge.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think council should be able to read this and make their recommendations, and we'll come back in 2 weeks with maybe some more suggestions or something. Is that okay to accept that one? Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Heidi. Do we have anything else for rules? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, you can do it.
Okay,
I will second that, sir.
thank you, Mr. Javer. We're adjourned at 7:28. Thank you, I'll pass, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is city utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call city utilities to order. All members are present, along with others noted on my sheet. It's October 25th, 2021, and we're in the council chambers. We have no requests for legislation, and I'll open it up to miscellaneous discussion for utilities.
I have none.
And Mrs. Angela?
None. None on the committee that I have.
Oh, Carol, Carla and
No,
Carol.
Thank you.
Okay,
I said no.
yes, you did. Anyone else? Hearing none, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
We are adjourned at 7:29.
Okay, thank you. Next up is finance and personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is Monday, October 25th. The time is 7:29. We are in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, as well as all other council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. Finance and Personnel has no request for legislation this evening, nor do we have any pending legislation. And if anyone has anything that they would like to discuss under miscellaneous discussion, please comment now. Mrs. DeBevick?
I just have a question regarding something that I was reading. I believe last Wednesday, the U.S. Senate passed a Bill 3011, the State, Local, Tribal, and Territorial Fiscal Recovery, Infrastructure, and Disaster Relief Flexibility Act. It's a bipartisan bill that would expand the eligible uses of American Rescue Plan Act funds to include infrastructure, disaster relief, housing, and community development. I do have I printed out a summary, and I also looked at Barberton, and we would be eligible for $10 million of our $16 million allocation as part of the flexibility Act. Is that, do you know any additional specifics about this, or?
It's in the House of Representatives, so it has not passed. So they could change that, or they could pass as is. There's no date to vote on that in Congress.
Okay. Yeah, I just knew it passed the Senate. Okay.
Councilor DeBevick, what number was that?
3011.
3011.
Thank you.
What does that,
What is it for, though? What does it say?
It provides flexibility in the use of ARPA funds.
Mhm.
They haven't come out with clear final guidance yet,
Right,
but it allows us to use the greater of either 10 million or 30% of the one allocation, so $10 million in as matching funds for a lot of federal programs, which typically you can't use federal money to match other
Right.
federal money. So one of the big ones would be CDBG, and then a lot of our road programs that we've got money awarded to us through the feds, through AMATs, for the coming years, so.
and that came out.
So you would be
We didn't
able
have a meeting last
to get grant money
No, it's Wednesday.
in addition to the 10 million?
That's the day
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, we could use
You
up
can
to
apply,
$10 million.
but we didn't have it.
And then apply for grants?
Oh, it was
Wow.
passed last Wednesday
Oh,
in the Senate. Okay, that's all I had. I just wanted to inquire.
no other comments or questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Angela,
I will second it.
seconded by Mrs. DeBevick, and Mr. Medges, too. You did it simultaneously, and we are adjourned at 7:30 PM.
Okay, that concludes our committee reports. We're going to take a 2-minute break and come right back.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. 497 is happening. Word to you, term cooling period, or from hearings, if we split an email from any day of the foster orders since years, all or immediately proceed in such day.
no, I'm not staying here by
It is,
What you,
Rolling period.
Oh, that was all.
Or rolling year is actually a term used.
okay,
So rolling year is.
right,
Trailer parked in the road.
right. Yeah.
Doesn't sound legal.
Yeah, so I just, like I said, I was just, when I was looking over it again, I understood now why I believed it wasn't like that, because of how it was written.
And you know what the chief was talking about with the fines, though? This nuisance law, they charge the people for going out on call.
Does he have an email?
Yes.
Have him email me so I can get it right.
Give me your email, please.
Just don't do the city one, T. Hyde, City Barberton. HBI.
Yeah.
It's just.
Time to go, that's my alarm, time for me to go.
He just says,
Somebody email me the address or email all the particulars to me so I can. Because when someone emails me that, when I give
Some days,
anybody
the one I
down
said I'm gonna
they can
call
never
for
say I
hours.
wasn't. That's why I like that, because if they say, you didn't do nothing, oh, here's some emails to show you I did. I did. Oh, we're gonna sleep. Why'd you do that?
Yes and no. So,
We don't have no
nuisance is stating that, I get what you're saying, but qualifying to account for something is qualifying. It doesn't mean it's nuisance. Well, it doesn't. It could. Now, if they go there and put their polls in, they would look at it just like they would.
They do. They do. But we can remove it. I just don't want to.
Get everything cleaned up.
We can present, I think it's huge.
I cleaned this down.
Oh, yeah.
With the correct time. That thing's always around. Okay, let's get started.
And if we have to legislate it, then we have to legislate it.
I know, can we stand up? We need those desks that can lift up.
All righty. This is a regular legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. This is Monday, October 25th, 2021. The time is 7:33. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mrs. Angela. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening, we ask that you guide us in having a successful meeting by helping us struggle for solutions among differing personalities that can seem impossible. But thankfully, we are not all expected to be perfect. May we speak out when it's time to speak out and listen patiently and receptively when it's time to listen. May we always be guided by the spirit of our community. Lord, we pray to bring healing and strength to our country, community, and to our families. Grant us peace as we trust in you. Amen. Amen.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. DeBevick.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mrs. Angela.
Here.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Javer.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, October 11th, 2021, as presented. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, October 11th, 2021, as presented.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to approve the minutes of the legislative meeting on Monday, October 11th, as presented.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, October 11th, 2021, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are adopted. Petitions and claims. Matters requested. Citizens addressing council.
There are none.
First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 115, 2021, presented by Mrs. DeBevick. Title, amend ordinance number 84, 2006, nuisance law. An ordinance amending ordinance number 84, 2006, section 674.02, notice, and 674.04, cost of abatement of the Barberton codified ordinances by changing the wording to modify nuisance activities to be calculated using 365 days from the earliest nuisance activity. This will go for 3 reasons.
Thank you. Second reading of ordinances and resolutions.
We have none.
Third reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 112, 2021, presented by Mrs. Angela. Title, amend Barberton codified ordinances, amusement devices, skill-based amusement machines and arcades. an ordinance amending section 836.04B of the Barberton Codified Ordinances, license fee, transfer and display of amusement devices, skill-based amusement machines and arcades. Ordinance number 53-2012.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 112-2021 be adopted.
Thank you. And Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll second Mrs. Angeloff's motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Angeloff and second by Mrs. Coburn to adopt ordinance number 112-2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. DeBevitt.
Yes.
Mr. Heidick.
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
No.
Mrs. Angeloff.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Mr. Javer.
No.
Mrs. Coburn.
No.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes.
Five to three.
I think that passes. Double check. Non-emergency. 5 votes are needed to pass. So that passes. Appointments. Utilities Appeal Board.
Mr. Patrick Betts, a 3-year term from January 1st, 2022 to December 31st, 2024.
Do I have a motion to call for this?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call for the appointment of Mr. Patrick Betts for a 3-year term, starting 1/1/2022 through 12/31/2024.
Thank you. And second, Mrs. Fry?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to second Mrs. Coburn's motion to appoint Mr. Betts.
Okay. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn and second by Mrs. Fry to appoint Mr. Patrick Betts to the Utilities Appeal Board for a 3-year term commencing January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2024. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Betts is in. Board of Health.
Mr. Joe Rogers for a 5-year term beginning January 1st, 2022 till December 31st, 2026.
Okay, do I have a motion for this, Mr. Jaber?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call for appointment of Mr. Joe Rogers for a 5-year term, starting 1/1/2022 to 12/31/2026, sir.
Thank you. And Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second motion on Mr. Rogers being appointed to a 5-year term.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mr. Jaber and second by Mr. Griffin to appoint Mr. Joe Rogers to the Board of Health for a 5-year term commencing January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2026. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Rogers is in. Miscellaneous and unfinished business. Mr. Jaber?
I'd like to personally thank Mr. Eddie Lawson and also the street department, and again, Mr. Craig Tracy for communication that we had a block party over the weekend and it worked out great, and also the safety director, Ms. Lois Doherty, for making that happen. And you got a great team, and they worked on Sunday and took time out of their hand, and it was very organized. I just want to say thank you again. Great work, guys. Thank you.
Anyone else? Communication from the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank everyone who came out for the October Change for Change. I don't have the totals right now, but it benefited the Merchants Association, and it was a great turnout. We also have a ribbon cutting for a new artist at White Rabbit Galleries. This weekend is our annual Halloween trick or treat from 5 to 7. Just ask everyone to be safe. There were some kind of protocols and safety measures put out by the Summit County Health Department that we put on social media last week. As mentioned before, we continue to track ARPA rules and regulations. Also, some of these programs are being introduced at the state level, so we can make use of through their ARPA application. Those will be introduced here by the end of the year as more information comes out. I'll pass it along. Also mentioned Senate Bill 3011 passed by the U.S. Senate, sitting at the U.S. House of Representatives. As I mentioned, they could change that, which could kick it back to the Senate. They could kind of volley back and forth, or they could pass as is. So there is no scheduled vote right now, but that does give great flexibility in the spending of ARPA funds. Kind of difficult because the Ohio Municipal League and other outlets have given some of the information. You can read the bill online, but it doesn't give the full description and a lot of the summaries. But waiting to hear from that, and then also the final guidance from the U.S. Treasury. Our street paving program is finishing up. Very excited that we were able to add 5 additional streets. This includes Central Avenue on the north side, Silver Street on the east side, Harold on the south side, and 28th Street on the west side. Also included was Carolyn Road, which we worked with the cities of Norton and New Franklin on that, because that's one of those roads that kind of transverses through all 3 communities. So we were able to work together, pull our money, and get it all done in one full swoop. So. We'll again be collecting canned goods and non-perishables for the entire month of December and all the way through January to the end of January, benefiting Vacuum and Salvation Army. So we've been doing this for a number of years, and it really helps the people in need here in the community. And those 2 organizations are great organizations, really putting Barberton people first. So we'll be collecting those, and I'll have drop-off points here in the coming weeks. And then just lastly, want to wish good luck to our Barberton football team as they enter the weekend playoffs here in Barberton. I think the first 2 rounds are here at Sharkey Stadium. North Olmsted is the team, and based on the records, I think that will prevail. So
I believe it's
It's Lakewood.
it's Lakewood. Did they change it?
Saturday, Louisville beat some team for West Virginia, which changed our level 2 divisor and moved us up a spot. So we actually have Lakewood instead of North Olmsted.
We're at number 3 now.
Lakewood's one of the biggest high schools in the state. So it's going to be a tough one. Well, I checked the website yesterday and they had North Olmsted. So.
The OHSAA just released today the new schedule.
Okay. All right, well, good luck to them either way. And, the Rangers will be down here, get kicked around by the Magic, so that's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else from the body? Mrs. Antoine?
Yes, and I'm excited about the first 2 playoff games coming to Barberton, so they can see our beautiful stadium, the turf that we put in, and maybe change some people's opinion of the Magic City. So I'm very excited about that.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Heidi?
I'm hoping the football team goes far enough that your leaf pickup turns into a snow shovel job, Mr. President.
It's almost done that before. So. Okay, anyone else? With nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mr. Heidick that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody want to stay? Okay. We are adjourned at 7:46.